I've been really lax about playing or doing anything really beyond working. I made myself ill Friday, couldn't play anymore. Couldn't play after work. I don't remember what I did. I think I had some vodka. And just this. I already knew I was sick though, because when I went swimming, my body went into shock before I had that. And all day today, I've just been laying around, unwilling to do anything. And so I do the first thing, and it's a random event, and I get an attrition famine event. This is more complex than the plague event because, well, plague gets worse later, but every province with 3 or more combat units is going to lose a unit. Modified as below. Lose an additional unit if besieged, looted, conquered, or Polish. Okay, and then lose one less if any of these things apply. All of the above cases are cumulative. So I've got this whole list of things like, hey, is there a river there? Is there this? Are there boats? Whatever. So I'm going to be picking through every damn stack, basically, because anything that looks like a stack has 3 or more units in it, and then make a count and see if it has any points. And then I think I'm going to just take my break and maybe play some more tomorrow if I get around to it. I just can't face this. I don't know if it's just my sickness or if the game itself is just not that thrilling to me. But aspects like that just really drag down on me more. And my state may be some sort of disposition against enjoying this. But during the economic phase this late in the game, we're only in turn 3, but still, things have been changing significantly. It means running down this list of cards. Okay, that's helpful. The cards give you the points on them. And depending on where they're sitting, it's important. Now, you have to worry whenever you see quotes or parentheses or plus signs or whatever. Hey, did these mean anything? And look them up and find them. Fine. That's a pain in the ass, but okay. One can get used to that, I think. But then what you have to do is cross-reference everywhere on the map, try to find those places and see, hey, are they looted or do they have some other effect that might affect their income? And then there's things that I'm not sure are in the rolls. For example, hey, I've got a Bohemian province. At the very least, Bohemian province that's been captured by the Austrians. At the very least, I should charge them the Palatinate, the looted problem of Prague. I don't want to cope with the rules to look it up because I don't really care what the answer the designer came up with and expressed in the rules, because I think these rules are so incomplete and poorly sort of hammered out that it's just not worth it. I'm as likely to come up with the answer that will be in the next version as is likely to be in here, understanding kind of the general gist of the game. So I'd rather do that. You also have to look up, I haven't gotten to production yet for everyone, but you have, nor promotion of cards, but you have to look up specifically, hey, how do the Polish troops reproduce? Well, I get 1 Polish unit in each empty province. I don't get the Polish income, I just get a die roll for that. And then the United Provinces produces 1 for free out of each province. But then I can buy more with the United Province. I don't think Poland says that. It just, is it meant to be that way? Is it not? I don't know. But Poland seems like more of a... it seems less dependent on foreign aid. So I would say I'm not really thrilled with the Poles having money spent for them, but I'm not sure I'm really opposed to it because they're basically a speed bump on the way to the French. Now, the Poles they have this parenthesized, which means eventually they're going to produce some sort of income for the Swedes and be a Swedish-controlled thingy, and they might produce me some extra cav as well. Pretty much the same role that they're sitting in for the Austrians right now. Not really a participant in the war, but a good-to-have thing if you get it up to control, and probably worth a couple extra bucks to work on that relationship. I lied, not only in terms of, hey, I came back and played, but also, which I forgot to mention. I like to tell you when I lie, so that you know that I lie a lot. But also, I did look up that rule I sort of stumbled on it, and you know, it's actually better than I expected. So, conquered territories. I'm not going to just pay for any cities or whatever that might have been looted, but I also pay one for the province itself. So, we have to drop this by one because I already charged it for Prague, but I didn't charge it for this. And I charged the Austrians for Austria, but they should be charged another one as well. Okay. Now, other provinces, I don't think anyone's lost anything that they're collecting income from. It's hard to tell. Saxony, who owns it? There's different cards for some of these. So, I mean, there's this weird situation where some of the provinces don't have cards. They're part of a collective card. And then others are, like Saxony, contain additional cards to cover some of their additional territory so that two players can both be gaining income from it. It's a decent solution. It's just one that's not really well expressed in the rules. Anyway, at this point I have to pay my maintenance costs and then do my upgrades. And it's really hard when I'm away from a game for so long to get into the flow of it, when I never got into the flow of it. Okay, after paying maintenance costs and then the upgrades for political conversions, well, the Palatinate is doing a lot worse, and Bavaria is not doing all that well either. But I believe the Palatinate has its 4 political crowns, which means it's going to be declaring itself HRE. That will be somewhat helpful. And then I can count my points. I think I upgraded. I didn't have to upgrade everything I did, but it's really hard to piece together and figure out, hey, what do I really need, what do I not? So like Spanish Netherlands has a good payoff. It's a $5 province. I wanted to move that out of the conquered section. And likewise, almost everything. I just wanted to shift them all. But now, you know, I don't have a lot left to build up more troops. That's okay, because I probably have the biggest army on the board. It's not so good for the Bavarians, who haven't expanded as well, didn't get as much income, and now really haven't been able... They don't have enough cash to build up a good army, and they're probably going to find themselves in opposition to the Palatinate now. They don't want the empire shifting hands, and they certainly want to be on the other side of that. The Palatinate is probably going to be facing almost everyone at this point. They've even pissed off the Swedes by taking Saxony. They've really made a lot of enemies, but they're close to victory. We did a count before. All those have to be in the control marker, though, and they were still short. So it's not like the auto victory is something that's all that close to happen, and I think there's plenty of time to take them down, especially now that France is back in the game. France is one of the few powers, though, that maybe is less interested in fighting the Palatinate and might actually end up allying with them because they're really interested in taking the Spaniards down. The Spanish would like a truce for this, but France has got their priorities, right? So that kind of starts knocking out a couple potential enemies, and it starts looking a lot harder. Sweden's still stuck in Poland because I didn't manage to move so that I captured everything. Which means we're kind of down to Austria and Bavaria moving against the Palatinate, and that does not look very healthy right now in terms of force pull. And what does look more healthy on, though, is that the Austrians have a pile of money. Wow, the Spaniards have a lot of money too, but again, they think they've got to take on the French. All right, it's time to buy units. We'll start buying, you know, the national stuff first. I've already kind of cheated by putting the auto-gen stuff, although I forgot the Swiss, into play. I'll come back after that. There's going to be a lot of babbling in my playthrough of this, both because of how I play it, and but also it's just there's a lot more time between turns, so you know the breaks are happening all over throughout the turns, and I can't just sit back and say, "Yep, did another turn," you know, and here's what you got, which is how I like to do games more. I steal a little time out of being ill. Bought some troops. Now, some people didn't have a lot of money. Like Bavaria was only able to buy 2 infantry. They basically really need forces to try to face the Palatinate's army. Likewise, Austria needed a bunch of forces. They bought themselves 1 leader in an army. They could have invested more. You can see they ended up with a lot of money left, as does Sweden, which is probably foolish since they're one of the front lines against the Palatinate. They got a decent amount of stuff, but they bid for high-end stuff. There was a gendarme available. They didn't get that. The Spaniards got that, I believe. But they got a heavy artillery, an elite cav, and some infantry, and gave themselves a little force here. It's really not enough to face this main force, and they've got 2 Austrian forces kind of positioned facing most of the Palatinate's force here and here. Palatinate itself they didn't have much money. They spent it all. They bought 4 infantry, upgrading Christian and what? I don't know who that is. George William. Okay. And George Wilhelm. Anyway, the Palatinate's looking at continuing to expand their size. Basically, they're going to win the election this time when we get to the diplomacy stage. First, we do the diplomatic bidding, though. And they have no cash, so people are going to strip their stuff away. This is the problem. If you can't bid, it's very easy to take away all their advantages. And they may find themselves, without... what's his name? I can't remember who it is. Mansfeld. Which he's in a stack here and may not be that necessary. He may not have many troops that he must command. A large Spanish army gathering up down here. I thought about using the off-board zone, trying to build into that. It doesn't make a lot of sense to attack the French off-board zone. So the only real thing would be to start trying to conquer France. Well, that doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense either. There's a lot of France, and I'm not going to get anything out of it. All I can do is prevent France from getting stuff. So I want to fight the French over in the territory that's worth something to me. Trying to strip a few points off France seems pretty weak comparatively. And trying to take the off-board zone, that's got no economic value. It's only a victory point value at the end of the game, and we're nowhere near there. The Swedes did not build up much. They repaired their units, and they're hoping they can take out the Poles this turn. It's not easy, though. They may be able to just, if they can do an assault, and then move up, dispatch a couple units to attack here. Basically, they only have so many movement points is the problem. Now, they could force march and take it all, and this might be the first time that I really want to do a force march. I tend to avoid things like force marches because I hate attrition. I just hate suffering. I think attrition rolls are great. I think the force march is reasonable. My mind doesn't work well in terms of, let's press the men and get more. Even when it's clearly advantageous, it's hard for me to think in that way. Anyway, so that's our setup before we go to the diplomacy. So the diplomatic bidding phase went kind of crazy this time because people were down here at the bottom of the track, money-wise. And we had, Sweden picked up a couple of Protestant territories over here. I ruled that they couldn't take Saxony because there's an enemy force there. And they couldn't take things like Denmark either because there are mercenaries there. I'm not so sure that's what's intended. It would almost make sense that those are Christian's mercenaries. And, he can say, screw you, man. But it makes things more complicated if I start allowing that in terms of trying to interpret what I could take otherwise. Basically, the question is who owns these, because Christian would come off the map, the Navy would come off the map, and what you'd end up with is a couple of Palatinate units in there, which is why you kind of can't take it, is that it would be something of a revolt, and basically the Palatinate would be able to recapture Denmark as a conquest. So it becomes a less valuable thing, although in a way, that might be okay. The Habs, why might it be okay? Because you're stripping something so important out of the Palatinate's hands. Even if they retake it, they're still not going to hold all of the money in value. because there's important stuff here like Schleswig and stuff that's just gone if they do it. And they wouldn't be getting the big income for the next turn because it would be a conquest instead of an influence or control as it stands. Saxony would be more problematic, obviously, because there's a much larger force there. But I stayed away from those, trying to interpret it that way. I think, though, that you could really maul somebody by doing diplomacy on territories that they rightfully still own. Similarly, Brandenburg had some mercenaries there, so I thought that would be a bad idea to go for. Although, again, it might not have been. And speaking of weird stuff, Mansfeld was converted over because the Palatinate has no money. The Austrians picked him up, and they offered him Poland. I don't know what the hell they just did. I think they just elected him King of Poland or something, but whatever. Poland's going to disappear pretty soon, so that's not that big a deal to give him that. Plus, it's not real money, but it doesn't appear like there's any restriction on doing so that I saw in the rules. I'm not too bothersome or too much bothering looking things up, as I said. I think these rules pretty much don't nail stuff down very well, so I'm not making any assumptions that I could find something that I looked for there. The French also managed to be able to pick on the Spaniards for the same reason. Spain was down to only $1, and actually the Austrians grabbed Württemberg from the Bavarians that way. The French grabbed Luxembourg and Lorraine. They didn't go as far as Alsace. They could have taken that. They wanted to keep a little bit of money just so that they don't end up in this kind of position. But yeah, you really have to kind of make a balance in your own mind. Hey, how much am I willing to keep on hand against the diplomatic aspect? Because that can be really, really potent and used against me. What was not done was none of the electorates were changed, in part because I didn't touch things like Saxony or Brandenburg that I could have, which means after we finish the alliances, or as we move through the alliance phase, we're going to see the shift of the Holy Roman Empire card over here, for whatever that matters, and that does all kind of weird things. Because there's cards that are anti-HRE and pro-HRE, for that matter, that swing over just based on, who's holding the title at that point. The pros make more sense to me than the antis. Some of the antis, I think things like Transylvania are anti-HRE instead of anti-Austria. They probably wouldn't be too opposed to a very, very Western-oriented empire. It's the fact that Austria was so close to their borders and had so many interests in their area, and Hungary, etc., that caused that. So I'm not sure I agree with everything that's going on there, but Austria seems to actually hold Transylvania somehow. I don't know, do they have the card? Jeez. This is it. So yeah, that's anti-HRE and anti-Spain, but they managed I guess to get that all the way up to control somehow. I don't know when that happened. Okay. I can't think of anything else there, so we're going to the alliance phase, and we'll see how those shake out, as well as what the effects of the crown's changing hand. After we realigned here, Spain, Austria, and Bavaria formed the Catholic League. France and Sweden formed the German Entente. Then we go to the imperial phase. He's got enough electors to get himself the emperor, and enough crowns, including the 1 vote for this. This is only worth a half vote because it's influence, but that put him to 4.5 to pass something. So he does. Well, the truce isn't going to work because nobody has to show up. The truce is pretty goofy because you need more than 4 votes, and it'll be pretty obvious that you have that if you're doing it on your own. It could be possible that there's some sort of secret cabal that maybe someone will go along and get screwed thinking that they have one alliance ready to vote or to prevent a vote. I don't know. I'm not sure what value it is, actually, because you still need more than 4. So if you just don't show up, it doesn't matter. And basically, only the people who are voting for something need to show up. I could see where the truce maybe could be sleeved some way. I have no idea how it could be done. Where it would be a powerful thing. Because, well, let's take it. France, for example, they aren't going to show up. They don't have a crown, no reason to, so they're not going to be affected by that. The Protestants had a couple of options. One is the Edict of Reversal. Now, you might say, wow, it doesn't make sense that should be passable unless the Edict of Restitution was passed first. And that may be the case. However, the way the rules are worded, it looks like maybe you can pass it anyway. And I would put that into play. However, instead I did the ban on foreign troops. This puts a penalty on the Spanish, French, and Swedish. They have to leave any states that they do not control. In addition, they can't enter any states that are not in their control at the time of the movement. This really screws Sweden, because they can't leave Poland until they conquer it. So they may just break this. If they do break it, or if anybody does, the player is penalized in that all cards not marked as being hereditary, controlled, or influenced by that player are treated as anti that player for the rest of the game. No religious bonuses are allowed. Well, there really aren't any, actually. There's just religious penalties, so I don't know what that's talking about. Once the ban has been broken, all other players are free to ignore it. And you'd have to revoke the ban to get rid of it. So, basically, the Swedes are in a really screwed position if this holds. And what's really obnoxious about it is the powers, Bavaria, Austria, and the Palatinate, can just move around and do stuff and take stuff from other people. And then it's no longer controlled by those other people. So none of it can be taken back. No response can be made. It also throws a truce between France and Spain, essentially, which was certainly not France's desire, I don't think. It's hard to tell. Anyway, that's where we are, and my power's running real low because this thing just never charges now. Bavarians have a tough situation. They move in and grab themselves Palatinate, upper Palatinate, right? No, lower. Upper's over here. The crown, though. And that gives them enough crowns. This one doesn't count, but 4 crowns they can claim. If they upgrade this Twin Influence, they can claim the Holy Roman Empire themselves next turn. Now, if they upgrade all of these, that'll give them enough to, to enact their own law if they wish, which might be the Edict of Restitution. Sweden went next, and they violated the ban on foreign troops, which means everybody's free to do whatever the hell they want now. But Sweden's got a penalty on any diplomatic actions, and the only way they can get restitution from that is by having an emperor propose, hey, we're going to allow Sweden's ban to be, removed from them. Somebody can throw another ban out there. It won't do shit against Sweden. Sweden's penalized, but it would affect Spain and France, perhaps. But anyway, any kind of truce between Spain and France that was just potentially enforced by this is gone now. And in doing so, Sweden managed, just by the skin of their teeth, to take out Poland. And that doesn't mean too much, because Poland was Mansfeldt's position. So, oh, terrible, he lost it. The Polish troops, I've decided they go over here now. They weren't available to be mustered except while Poland's not a country. Poland doesn't exist as a country unless they form as an independent force again. And basically, I don't know what the hell their value is here. I don't know if these guys get a die roll on them or anything, but they can't build the troops from them until they're allowed to go independent, and then people can bid on them and try to buy them. I'll leave the mightiest for last, because they're still in the cup. That's the Palatinate in there. French then opened up, marching down, grabbing themselves the Franche-Comté, and they also laid siege to Brabant up here, hoping to take the Spanish Netherlands away. It doesn't really make sense to me to split up and try to defend multiple cities. The enemy can split up and siege them all. I don't know. However you want to look at it. Anyway, then we went to the Austrians, who managed to successfully get Mansfeld and Piccolomini together. I think they're both in there together. Put Piccolomini on top. and take Lower Bohemia, slipping around this way. No cost because it's all controlled territory. And that gave him control of Bohemia. That's a big deal because that takes away the, hey, you can't bid on Bohemia factor from the game. And had to remember to leave a garrison behind for all the territories, just like the Swedes had trouble in Poland, right? And let's see, the next one is the Spaniards, who slammed up, laid siege up here, whatever this is. Wow, there's no town. I guess I gotta fight a battle there. And couldn't have brought those other troops through. I brought other troops through to here and here. I guess I could have withheld them though. So let's fight that as a field battle. I forgot to do that. And then I'll come back and do the Palatinate. Okay, so for the I did what I could with fixing that, and the French withdrew because they were outnumbered. Now, presumably they would have withdrawn here. More Spaniards would have moved forward. The hell with it. The Dutch fleet came out. Now, why? Because I need to evacuate troops from there. I can't face that French army. And now we're going to have what amounts to really just a straight up naval combat, which works just like land combat, except only the fleet supply, and they just are 2s each because they're 2-point fleets each. So the Spanish hit the Dutch twice. We'll take these hits and we'll withdraw, and we're done. Well, that wasn't very good. And I'll work on the rest of the Palatinate here. But I wanted to show you a naval battle. I don't think I'm going to bother with the optional land battles. I'm never a big fan of these random mini board type things. I don't mind them too much as random generators for like a real minis game, but for something that we're going to be fighting on this, it's kind of like trying to do the random advanced combat in Kingmaker over here. I just don't think it adds a hell of a lot to the game. I think in Kingmaker a lot of the other advanced rules are kind of cool, but the advanced combat is, I don't know, it actually adds something. It might for this too. I don't know how much though. I feel like I'd be spending too much time playing around on the tactical board like I would in a Titan battle. I don't feel like adding that aspect to the game when I'm trying to learn the strategic side of things. In Kingmaker, it changes the dynamic of what a powerful force is. Here I don't feel like it really does. Although a large force of crappy units is going to be harder, especially with terrain in the way, of being able to launch an attack on someone. But it's just something I don't want to do. And so far I haven't had a battle where there have been 6 units on both sides yet. You're bidding on something like Saxony, which is now open. Oh no, I got a garrison there actually, as long as I pay for him. You kind of have Brandenburg's open. You kind of have this situation where, it's about even what happens. So the things that were purchased back, like Silesia, I think the Swedes bought. Moravia, or Lusatia here, I think somebody bought. This was Swedish, Moravia. These were really easy to retake. Then again, so are things like Munster. So if somebody's not buying your property from you, it's not like they're paying you, they're paying money, but you can just retake it as long as you have armies nearby. So it's not that terrible a thing to have stuff bought out from under you. The real danger was, hey, could they have bought out one of the crowns? And what would that mean? And that's not clearly handled. So, for example, the situation I was in earlier, what happens if I buy Saxony and now it's, no longer a crown in the Palatinate's hands because they were out of money, and it's instead a crown in somebody else's hands, say Bavaria's, but it wouldn't be. But someone aligned with them, like Austria, who might be willing to say, okay, we're willing to pass, the Edict of Restitution at this point, just because we think it's not good the way things are going. Well, is that terrible? I don't know, but I'm somewhat disturbed by the idea of being able to buy something out and then it doesn't have a chance of being conquered until the movement phase. So I just kind of had a well, the only resolution I could have that made sense was to do things as I was. Anyway, you can see the Danes came down, grabbed some United Provinces forces, grabbed Munster. They didn't feel like they were strong enough to face the French across the waterway here. What else? We took Bohemia back, but abandoned Austria. You can see we have this. We removed our troops from here. Leaving a garrison of like a strength point, it's necessary if you just conquered the territory. But if you didn't, if you actually have it at influence or better, you're probably better off not leaving it there, because unless you leave a fairly strong pile of troops somewhere, you can't really face a moderate size, a fairly strong pile of troops that the opponent throws at you. So it's best to kind of concentrate your forces as much as you can. But if you want to conquer more than one territory with a stack, and you can do that, these guys marched up from here 1, 2, 3 and took 2 areas. Other people could take more than that. I don't know if anybody did. The Swedes certainly had to. George William did more as well. He marched into both these. If you want to take multiple areas, you have to leave some garrison behind, and that's, of course, the pain. And that's the end of this turn. Nobody's won, I'm pretty sure. He has less units in control than he used to, even if he has... and actually, he doesn't have enough crowns, although he has the HRE, and that qualifies instead of a crown. So either one would work. And that means we pop this over to 4. For an event, we rolled up the Baltic War. Swedish and Hanseatic fleets each lose 1 naval strength point. Sweden loses 2 combat units. Danish card and units are removed from play. Ignore if Sweden holds the Danish card. Wow, that's pretty harsh. So, let's see. The Swedish fleet is damaged. The Hanseatic fleet, which I've been kind of ignoring over here and could have been using, is damaged. Swedes lose 2 units. Well, we'll lose that damaged infantry. Can't lose something down here, because this is my garrison. So my other question is, hey, do I want to lose an elite cav or an infantry? They're the same price. I'll take the infantry. It's an elite infantry. But now Denmark gets removed from the game. And somehow I think I sailed the Danish fleet into land, didn't I? Apparently not. There they are. Okay, so the Danes are just gone. I don't know quite where to put them. And then Denmark, I have to find them. Berg. Alright, well, I'll try to hunt them down. They don't have an image here, so I'll have to guess what their shield is. And then, where do we move? I don't know. To money. Kind of partway through the economic phase, and I notice, oh wow, I didn't bother resolving the siege here, and the Spanish Netherlands fell to the French. I guess, there's just so many things in this that aren't clearly stated, and I keep going one way or another on them. And in this case, that's what happened. What the hell? Because I've done it. That's really what it comes down to. What else? Money. Money is real low for everyone. So this is after maintenance costs. We can see Bavaria is still way down there. Spain's getting down there. And these others don't have a lot to play with. And they've kind of learned a lesson from last turn, where the Palatinate kind of got screwed over and basically managed to break even, although they were facing a large number of people. Swedes have a lot of money, for no really good reason that I can think of, except no one's really been picking on them, especially since the territories the Palatinate took back, where they were Swedish, they were ones that weren't producing money, etc. So that's kind of an issue. I think so. The issue that I was kind of grumping about was I had this Siege of Antwerp here. So I also there's a number of things here. One is Antwerp ends up being the city between these two. So I shouldn't have retreated here because by capturing it, I think I ended up getting that territory as well somehow. I don't know. But alternatively, I also rolled on the siege table and got that 5 to 6 each. One of each side is eliminated, and then the fort falls. Well, you know, we had this before. Maybe we can find something here. Fall of a fortress. See, fall of a fortress says is when all the defenders are eliminated or a surrender result is achieved. It sounds the equivalent to the surrender result, and they're not described differently. What I would think of is maybe it's an automatic honors of war or something. You know, I just don't feel like it's my job to design this game any more than I've already kind of done to try to get it playable. And if I played it a few more times, I probably would come up with a fairly, like I have with some games that I really love, La Révolution Française, Europa Universalis, where I come up with my own interpretation of the rules that's kind of at odds with the game. And I would feel no problem with doing that with this, except that this doesn't solo as well as those guys do from my point of view, just because of the mechanical aspects. And honestly, those mechanical aspects are going to be a pain in the ass playing it opposed as well. So unless there's a lot of additional play aids in the new edition, I don't think that I can really recommend this. Okay, so at this point, I've paid off the maintenance costs, but I gotta still pay rebuilding costs if I want and start putting units on the board. And that's all a pain in the ass, of course. Part of why it's a pain in the ass is because every one of these little, you know, all the little miners that have their own troops and everything have their own special rules to handle how they're handled. Now, again, I don't mind that in Europa Universalis, even though it is not that extensive. There's maybe a dozen miners that have real issues there. Here it's proportionally about the same, but very seldom do those rules come into play. But here, it's quite often the case that somebody's involved in one of them because of the fact they're all player controlled, all those important miners. So this is kind of like playing, say, the 30 Years' War scenario, no big shock, of EU, which is just chock full of special rules too. So when you hit that particular era in EU, yeah, you deal with as much annoyance as this game has, but you're getting that grand scope of a much larger thing. And you're also getting a kind of more believable, I think, mechanism to handle the play and how things work out. This feels a little too freeform at times, a little bit too much, maybe because of the immediacy of the victory conditions of this scenario. I've never played just the 30 Years' War scenario, at least not the campaign that contains the 30 Years' War. I think there's a pure 30 Years' War scenario as well, non-campaign game. But the immediacy of, oh man, we can't let this person win, which, you know, in EU I'm willing to blow that all off because I can say, this game ain't balanced, but it's this grand scope of storytelling. This game, I feel like the player balancing allows it to play perfectly balanced, or reasonably so. The players have enough power to affect one another. Nobody's in this position where they're kind of immune to that kind of effect. But it makes it kind of move into the realm like Empires in Arms, where people are doing goofy stuff because the victory conditions, even though somewhat based on a reality, don't end up translating to realistic actions by the players, right? So, you know, I don't think, for example, Austria never, to my knowledge, came directly to blows with Bavaria. Now, I'll have to grant you this much. Bavaria was never in the realm of grabbing the imperial crown during the 30 Years' War. You had some major enemies who were sort of defined and kind of fixed in place, but you didn't have this kind of, well, that may be the issue here. Is here you have players very free to make the alliances they want to, and in a situation where it's fairly obvious who's doing well, who's not, and you can hunt down the victor. So if Austria is doing well, Bavaria will turn on them in a way that they didn't historically when Austria was doing well. Maybe a wise player won't, but I bet in most groups it'll happen. Kind of cool things is money is becoming very scarce. In part it's because everybody started out with provinces but now under control, but now they're at lower levels because people are capturing them from each other or bidding on them or whatever. Although a significant number have been removed from the pile entirely, still, when you count Denmark too, which was a big 8, there's money that's coming out of the system. And the armies are getting bigger, so it's costing more to maintain them. In particular, though, if you look at Bavaria, Palatinate, they spent Palatinate especially, spent a pile of money again upgrading units, but also upgrading political position here. Now, Palatinate didn't want to get in the same position they were in before, so they saved a little bit. But things that are left in the conquer box, they got to leave a garrison in, which means that's costing them $1 a turn plus an army that, like, you know, an army unit that probably cost them at least $3 to build. Exception, of course, being that, well, it might only be 2 for an infantry. A lot of them have infantry. There aren't a lot of light cav being used as garrisons, which are the optimal thing at $1 each. But anyway, it does mean that some significant forces are on the board that aren't really operating effectively for the players. And then stuff like, well, I upgraded Saxony, so I can bring the Saxon army on. And now it's time to buy armies as well. But there's just not a lot of money for anybody to do that. The Swedes have enough money to recoup their army and maybe play some bidding games to rip off property from other people, and that'll make their advances more rapid. They upgraded Poland. They're not going to get the Polish army, but I guess they can move it into the influence space so that they don't have to garrison it everywhere, because it's an expensive place to garrison. You don't really want it to be a neutral place again. Although the big issue with Poland, you know, it costs $2 to upgrade it, but the big issue with Poland is get it conquered so that I can play the game, right? Because the Swedes can't play until they conquer Poland. Running into a component problem here. So these guys, I think, are Reiters. I've been playing them as light cav. It's really hard to tell, but now that I see one of these, I see this is similar to what the elite cav, which I think is supposed to be the light. You see where it all gets screwed up now. Elsewhere, though, basically the issue there has to do with what's on the back of these damn, if I can find one, gendarme units, and I don't know who has one, but these ain't them. And those, I think, should be the light cav, because somewhere gendarmes are described as having light cav on the back, I guess. And I've just been playing the Reiters as them, just because it's so hard to see the difference. Well, see, now that is a Reiter. That is the kind of unit that I was saying is on the back of the other. So what we had was the gendarme with one of these on the back, with a Reiter on the back. Whereas, and I have no idea, You know, these, which look the same, have infantry on the back, and I just don't know. Yeah, I've got to find the casualties for the damn units. Superior units, gendarmes take a hit and they turn to riders. Okay, so there we have it. So I don't know what these are meant to be. Whether they're actually... So there was something else which made it seem like these were the elites. Namely that the Swedes had these guys. Or maybe it's just me reading what's on the back of these. See, there's nothing on the back of these. And the Swedes start with elite cav. There's also, and there were other countries that seemed to be the case as well. There's also something else, I don't know, to do with this, where there were other confusing things. But, you know, hopefully that would all get cleared up in whatever the eventual version is. But yeah, I've got to pay attention that those guys with the little guns are the riders, doing the carousel and all. And why these powerful Lancer-looking units would turn into these, I don't have the slightest clue. To me, the best cav that was on the field were the Swedes. They were not Lancers. The Polish Lancers would be right up there. And then the Swedes were armed very much like riders were, but they used different tactics. They were willing to charge. And you had that ability with other cav too, but they just didn't have the morale capability to fight that way. So I don't know. The pictures don't make sense with what they are. I would want something more like this to convert into this, and this to be more like Lancers, and only available to a very few countries, Poland being one of them. And I don't know what the light cav would come from. Okay. And on top of that we have these French gendarmes here. On their back have not only something that's green, which we knew about, okay, but something that's halfway between the two. It's shorter like a rider's gun, but thinner like an elite cav or light cav or whatever they actually are. It's just really a mess with the components. And let's see. The bidding went. There wasn't a lot of money in anybody's hands. France did kind of a picked on Savoy, drained all of Spain's money, and then bought themselves Milan. The Austrians did something similar. I don't remember. They picked on Austria-Hungary, drained the Palatinates' money, and then bought themselves Nassau here. I'm really unhappy. I looked at the Nuremberg rules again. Nuremberg doesn't produce income, yet its card, its map position, everything says $1. Any attacker pays double to influence German states until the end of the game. Yeah, if you actually attack it. It's such a weird thing because it can't change out of Austrian hands, but it's got this weird sanctuary role where anybody can go in it and take the defense of it, I guess. And if somebody attacks it, even while they're in it, while someone's in it, they get the penalty from then on. Just all kinds of screwy stuff with it, which, you know, like a lot of the game, there's just too much of these special little rules for special little places. It doesn't look like that big a list of different places, but it really seems to drag on me in the game. Anyway, only 2 people did economic action. Swedes don't want to do it because they've got their penalty. They want to get the HRE in someone's hands who's willing to make that conversion. Well, speaking of which, somebody actually has the HRE in their hands, but they're not willing to make that conversion, which is the Bavarians. They're going to be able to at least seize the empire and I think pass a law, and we'll see restitution there. We have to see a rearrangement of alliances though, and the Swedes feel themselves more aligned at this point with the anti-Palatinate people. That's who they really need to attack right now. They're also not really in a great position to attack anyone else except maybe the Austrians. So that's going to be their undertaking at this point. Oh. So I don't know what that's going to shake up. I don't see any real reason for this alliance to break, and I don't see any real reason that they don't allow the Swedes into it. None of them want to be fighting Sweden particularly, which means France will probably be alone. We might end up seeing a France-Palatinate axis forming, though. Grounds were enough to hand the empire over to Maximilian of Bavaria, but not enough because he didn't buy these over. He was low on money, and he's still pretty low on money, to the point where he didn't want to shift these over and get the Edict of Restitution. So he's unable to effect that. And this is our alliance, the Catholic League with Sweden in it, and we could have moved it to another slot, but and I guess we're ready to start the battles. Okay, the Bavarians open things up pretty mildly. They have to leave this force here in their view just because of the danger of the Palatinate, well, the United Provinces forces pounding their way in and stealing electorates from them. Bavaria needs the electorates. They're the thing keeping the Palatinate from having them. And they're the ones able to have taken the Holy Roman Empire away. They moved forward, grabbed themselves, what's this, Hesse-Darmstadt, and no further because of the terrain. They didn't want to force march. For the Palatinate, they abandoned Lusatia, giving it up, gathered together George William's forces and attacked and took Poznan, killing Gustavus. He didn't have a lot to defend himself there. So now he's got his replacement, who is Banner. Not particularly good here. And maybe not that impressive overall. And then they also launched all the forces from Bohemia down into Austria-Hungary, attacked Lower Austria, took it, attacked Styria, took it, wiped out Montecuculi, Mansfeld, and their forces, but then got stopped by Ferdinand here in Carinthia. And quite possibly that's going to be able to turn around. They're now outnumbered by the Austrians down there. And they're facing dangerous situations with the Swedes up here. Saxony, they made an attempt to take the Saxon Duchy and failed. And after a couple of losses withdrew back into Saxony. So that can't be just bid against them. Although that wouldn't really be too big an issue. Saxony is going to get to rebuild its units, and they'll build them in Saxony and therefore prevent a bid from happening. You got to remember the timing in the game, and that's always a tough thing for me to learn. Largely, though, I am getting into the pattern of this, except for the stupid counters. And you know, it pisses me off so much because only light cav can pursue. They're really good at it. They have a 3 combat rating on pursuit. I think all cav should be able to pursue, though. In the era, all cav was capable of that. You know, and even your lancers, your well, whatever the gendarmes are supposed to be, these were all capable of doing quite a bit of damage in a rout. And it just seems ridiculous to say, okay, only if you have the really rare and very useless light cav can you ever get a pursuit going, because nobody buys that shit. And nothing converts into that shit except for damaged gendarmes. Well, damaged gendarmes convert into it. Sometimes, maybe. Sometimes I'm not sure they do, because they don't have the right thing on the back. But, you know, you don't really want to take that point of damage. That's a big point of damage. The gendarmes have a 4 combat value. Light cav has a 1. So you're taking a 3-point hit, which is bigger than like losing an infantry or something to take that single hit on it. Of course, you can recover for just 1 economic point from a light cav up to a gendarme, but if you want to continue fighting and stuff, you want to keep your gendarmes in good shape. Okay, so before we get to the Spanish, the French did a quick maneuver gathering their forces here at Metz. That's going to be important in a moment. They didn't have enough to really feel like they could go on the offensive, and they went and took Savoy with their Swiss. This is important because the Swiss are kind of great shock troops. You can lose them and they just get rebuilt, and you can fling them back in. It doesn't cost you a lot to rent them each time. So that's really pretty awesome. I'm seeing them as really dangerous, and the Italian territories are now falling mainly to the French, which is also important. The Swedes swung around. They didn't have much here in Greater Poland, but all their leaders were here. So they swung around through, cleared Silesia, attacked Brandenburg, failed to take Berlin, and decided instead to withdraw into Pomerelia and gather their forces together under the command of their leader, Torstenson here. Which puts them in a better position vis-a-vis the Brandenburgians who are gathered here. If they could have knocked out Brandenburg, that would have been pretty big too. They left Silesia neutral, and that means it's now in the neutral deck and available for bidding. And you see, as you know, the situation starts to collapse, we start to see countries being stripped away and just left alone, because I couldn't afford a garrison for it. I could have left a leader back there. I had an extra leader who isn't doing me a whole hell of a lot here, but I didn't want to risk that under those circumstances. I probably should have, because if I had gotten Brandenburg, I would have then had both. But what I am allowing myself is, hey, if I just conquered a territory, I can move units back into it. It may be kind of cheating, but the troops are already gone, you know. I shouldn't have to fight them again just because I moved out. I don't know. So in that case, if I had taken Brandenburg, I could have recommitted my forces back there. That's what I allowed myself in their conquest of Poland. So now, I think I'm going to do the grand battle stuff. The Spanish marched up to Metz because they don't want to just wipe out the Swiss. That does them dick. Basically, they have to knock France out as a viable power. France and Spain are so handcuffed to each other where they have to fight each other. So I'm going to start working with the setup for that before I go to the last player, who is, of course, going to be the Austrians. We don't have a lot of troops available. A whole pile here. Looks like everything else has been wiped out, so they may be able to get themselves one territory, but that's about it. So we have to determine what the battlefield actually looks like. It doesn't always look like this. In order to do that, we roll up the terrain once on each of the following tables. First, the river table, which is that line crossing the contents there. There's nothing there. Bridge, we don't worry about because we didn't get any event there. How about towns? One die is rolled for towns. Subtract 1 if the battle is occurring in Poland. It is not. Okay, so we get no towns. It's going to be a clear battlefield, huh? Forest. Subtract 1 if it occurs in Poland. Add 2 if it's in a forested province. It is not. We're going to get 3 forests. That's going to be these trees. No mounted units other than light cav can attack or move into the forests. Artillery may not move into the forest. All units attacking a forest have their combat value lowered by 1. If there's 2 forests in a space, no one can go in it. But where does the forest show up? Well, that's a good question. I think we roll the 11 to 66 for each, right? Same manner as towns. Yep. Okay. So it's completely random. I would prefer to have sort of a commander versus commander roll with some sort of strategic value to determine how well the terrain is generated. But that's just me. So there we have a forest.
another forest, and another forest. Okay. Hills. Hills are rolled just like forests, but we subtract 1 if it's in Poland, add 2 if it was entered through a mountain. No. No more than 1 hill for a space. Let's see if we get any. We're going to get 4 hills. Okay. And they also get randomly placed. And these hills have their own effect. Costs a full move to enter a hill square. Units attacking hills, other than heavy artillery fire on its own, are lowered by 1 in combat. $52, 23. So we got a forested hill here. And I guess that's cumulative. Now we roll to see which side of the map the defender is going to be set up on and the attacker's on the other side. So the defender is going to set up columns 15 through 65 and 16 through 66. So all his troops set up here in the front of the defender. The attacker will be on the other side. Player with the highest totals outscouts opponent and forces his enemy to deploy first. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cav here. Now what's cool about this is it actually reduces the amount of units that are engaged in battle. I consider that really awesome. Okay, 5 to 3, so the French have a +2. And that's just automatic. Okay. And nobody's got light cav, I think. You have to place in the rows that you're deployed in 12 boxes, subject to terrain limitations. If you have more than 12 units, they're a reserve off his side of the board. In addition to the units, you get a wagon. Which has to be deployed. Can be stacked with other units, but cannot move once placed. If an enemy unit enters that box, the baggage train is destroyed and the marker removed, and then the combat value of each unit on that side is reduced by 1 for the battle. How's the actual battle handled? Well, gosh. They don't explain that, do they? Maybe it's here. Yeah. Okay, so it goes on into here and we get into a phase, a separate little mini game. So we're going to look at that and explain the rules to that before we go on. Well, I looked over the system and it's not only pretty intuitive, but I think I actually went over it when I looked at the rules about as much as I would go now. So we're just going to play it out and look at the example as we go. So who's the phasing player? That's the first question. Okay, so attacker in the attacking phase. Alright, so it's going to be the attacker first. So the phasing player moves. The attacker is going to be the Spaniards in this case, I believe. Yeah, it's their turn. So we'll get them going. Now I marked, I threw a Danish ship out here. That seems pretty clear as my marker. So I'm not quite sure what I want to do terribly. There's no real penalty for me hanging back and trying to use defensive terrain myself. But let's attack. This is expensive. Now, where's my movement? Leaders and mounted move 2 boxes. Infantry only moves 1. So we're always allowed to move 1 box. Let's look up here. Hills. Oh, geez. And you got to look up each item Takes a full move to move into a hill, a forest. All of the units attacking into a forest have their strength reduced. So we'll just push forward with all of our forces. We can't move that. And we're not any closer. Now, the defender actually is in range of attacking units and would be able to fire at them with his artillery, if not for the fact that you can only fire back at things. That's very clear here. Units in the non-phasing player that were fired at may return fire against any unit which fired on them. So only the attacker gets to start a combat, as it were. Which means we're going to move over to the French side. Now here, we have to decide, well, where does our advantage come from this? And do we even want to fight? We can withdraw without a round of fire, effectively. This is different from the normal combat, where you pretty much have to suffer a round of combat against all of the opposing units. Well, unless the opposing side throws cav in, they're not going to be able to engage. So their infantry is not going to be able to hit you. Interesting concept, huh? I don't like when the tactical system is significantly different from the simplified system. It's something that makes me always kind of shy away from tactical battle boards. So there's an advantage to attacking, though. So we shall do so. Stay there. And I'll show you what that advantage is in a moment. Remember, this is clear. All right. Now, I can attack diagonally. And this is where it's going to come. So, I get to do my fire first. I've got 2 infantry that are going to fire at this space. Now, this is important because I'm not going to allow this guy a counterfire. So my 2 infantry hit on a 1 or a 2. We don't get any hits, but I have to kind of mark them to remind me where those attacks are coming from. Over here, we're going to attack diagonally again with these and hit that space, and here we'll hit this space. Okay. So here I have, I guess that's a rider. We'll give that a 2, and the other unit has a 3 against the infantry. We get 1 hit. This unit will get to fire back. So right now, these, I don't have a way of marking this. The game doesn't provide you with something, but these 2 Spanish units get to attack back. And now we have an attack the same kind against Piccolomini's command here. We got 2 hits on him, which I believe is enough to kill both of these, and I don't know how to mark that either. Well, one way is to bring them back. So Piccolomini does not get hit twice here. Just his unit gets hit, I think. We'll have to look that up in a moment. Because he's attached to a unit, he has a chance of dying, though, which is the leader loss. And that's the disadvantage to firing twice at one unit, is that you might waste a shot. If a leader's with a unit that's eliminated on 11 or 12, he's killed. He can't be killed through normal means, but he is dead. So now, we move those dice so that we can get back here. And he needs a 1 through 4. He can attack at either of these. We'll go for the elite cav because that's the better target. We miss. So, Piccolomini shows up here. And this elite cav, which has, what I guess, light on the other side. I don't know. I thought it was, yeah. I really don't know. So this guy gets a shot back as well. Now he's still a 3-point guy. He'll hit elites. And he fails. And then this guy gets to shoot back, and he's a 4-pointer because he's got a Spinola on him, and he'll attack, I don't know, this infantry. And that's sufficient to kill the infantry. Okay. Now, what else? Each phase has 5 segments. What the fuck? No, the other side. Okay. So that's a round of combat, and we'll continue on with it. As you can see, there's going to be a little bit of interplay trying, to use the maneuvering and the terrain. So far, I feel like I'd rather see the strategic combat in play all the time, just because this changes the nature of what a battle is. It changes what the results are likely to be. It's like if you played, the best example I can think of for this is Federation and Empire and Starfleet battles. If you played out Federation and Empire battles using Starfleet battles, the defender pretty much always has the or whoever wants to, always has the opportunity to simply withdraw by using a retrograde maneuver. A very weak force might get eliminated by a very powerful force. Maybe. If you tweak the rules a little bit in that system. And likewise in this, either player has the opportunity to withdraw. The attacker automatically has that opportunity. Is there any reason the attacker would want to attack a space and then withdraw? Probably not. Probably not. That probably doesn't make any sense in this game. But there is a reason in Fed and Amp. But unless he swamps the enemy with cavalry, and only his cav is going to get to fire, the enemy gets to run away without losses. If he does send his cav forward, the enemy gets to shoot up his cav to some extent in a counterfire and then withdraw. And the nature of the combat is going to be different in the sense that the attacker would get to attack with all his cav. The defender would only get to attack with those units that were actually attacked, which means if you're double teaming, you can reduce the risk to yourself unless the defender chooses to stick around and fight another round, which of course means that if he wants to get all his firepower in, he has to actually leave his forces on the field. Again, a difference in terms of the overall effect of the battle. And that just disturbs me. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's see. We should be on the Spanish movement again. You know what? I'm forgetting this. Non-phasing cav units move. They can go one extra box if they're not adjacent to an enemy. If they're with light cav and leaders, can still move a box as long as they're not adjacent to the enemy. Light cav or leaders acting as light cav, right? I don't know if that was an issue. So we're kind of densely placed here. I think what we want to do is slide. Hopefully I didn't forget to take advantage of any terrain that was in place. I'll move him down. And I guess that's it. Now I get to declare my attacks. Now I don't want to move up because that would open things up, but we'll give that non-phasing player gets to throw his cav in. Dink. Alright, but it doesn't make a damn bit of difference because I'm not going to attack that cav. I'm going to attack the infantry here. So we have an elite cav, and I think this is an elite infantry. By the picture, we're looking at a 4 because we got a leader in here with a plus. If he didn't have a plus, it wouldn't help at all. So we get 2 hits on this. That's going to destroy this. I'll put a die on it to try to remind me that I get to fire back. These guys went. These guys. We're going to go after the cav here. 2 shots at 3s. Okay, we also hit him twice. Again, not a big deal, but we could be getting more shots off, but we'd get return fire from that. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do that. And here, we're looking at a 4 and a 2, and we're going to pick on the elite cav with that. And we hit that as well, and it'll get to shoot back. I'm going to shoot back at the big cav because that's the best thing I can hit. I don't get that. Over here, I get to shoot at either of these. I'll go for this guy because the woods I have a penalty at shooting at. And he was killed, I believe. I think that's what I marked by having him upside down. And here all I have is a 2. I want to shoot back at the cav. Again, because I think there's a penalty for the woods, and the cav's a better unit, and la la la. And I managed to hit the cav, which wipes it out, makes for a leader loss check, which doesn't affect anything. But now he's on his own. I think he counts as a light cav now that he's on his own. I'm not sure, because there's no rules for what happens if I walk into a leader who's not a light cav. Okay, and this was dead. Because he's turned upside down, I guess. And we gotta make sure what's on the front. Make sure he goes in the right pile. Now I get to do the froggies. And things are beginning to look a little crappy. My numbers aren't so good. Can I get an advantage by firing next? See, I don't want to lose my cav leader. I think I'm gonna withdraw. See, I want to be able to shoot. I guess I could shoot him on 1, 2, 3, 4. Sounds like a good move. Oh, he gets to move his cav. Only one space, but... Okay, we kill this. And now we're on the next turn of it. Since I should have tried to pick off whoever this is, Spinola here, instead of running away. That was probably a mistake, because I'm going to gather up to him. Killing leaders sounds like a good idea. He's just a light infantry. Okay. So, we've got 1, 2, 3 infantry, all elite against that cow. We kill it, and it gets to shoot back at one of us. I don't know which one. Say this one. I'm not sure. No, we'll do this one. Nope. And I'm just doing them immediately, because trying to remember so that there's 2 pulses just does not do shit for me. Now, here's the problem. I could withdraw here. That cav could have withdrawn as well. Give me it back. He was here. Okay, so if I withdraw off the map with these, I can pull him off. And then on the French turn, I can pull the rest of these off. Get them out of there, and they don't take any additional losses. Now I guess there would be a pursuit, but I can't use these guys as light cav for that. I have to have actual light cav, which of course nobody has, because it's such crap. Which means the Spanish have won the Battle of Metz, except I forgot to put the excess troop in there. Oh well. I do that quite often, where I forget to use the garrison infantry. And in part, I'm not sure if it always belongs here. It certainly would. There was a control marker. So the Spanish get that. And Metz is now theirs. The net effect of that battle was to make withdrawing, and probably in general for the game, withdrawing is a little bit more painful on the battlefield if you choose to engage at all. If the person who wants to withdraw does so right away
it's probably less painful, but it's more painful just because you kind of have to protect the units as they're withdrawing. If you set up to withdraw with all your slow stuff in the back and your cav in front, you can pull all your units out and not pay any price and never have to have a roll against you. If you set up to fight, you might have difficulty breaking away as you push units forward. Anyway, I think the Spaniards did better. I noticed that they had left Franche-Comté empty. Well, too bad for them. They lose it. They did at least leave somebody back in Lorraine. I'm not sure that they didn't want to lose it as part of the problem, because they're looking at the Swiss here. We're able to strike everything there. There's really not a whole hell of a lot that can be done about the Swiss except buying them off, because they just keep coming. Okay, and now we'll see what the hell the Austrians can do with their tiny little stack. Austrians took Lower Austria back. They walked through this space. I don't know what happens to that space for them walking through it, because it's sort of part of this province. So is it now just neutral and nobody control? I don't know. But I haven't been marking provinces that, you know, generally I mark something like, hey, I got both of them. I don't know what's up with that. And I don't know what it matters that it's not theirs anymore if it isn't, or if they just kind of inherit it, if that's the case. And they took Lower Austria, burned the city accidentally. Then from here, there's special rules for Transylvanians. They can move into any adjacent space without a leader, which is weird, because then I could be, I don't know, besieging something and I don't have a leader on top, so I guess I put a control marker or something to remind me who owns the units that are besieging. But anyway, I marched here into Austria and failed to take it. Now, if I took this, I would say I got this too. I got no idea how to resolve those issues. But instead I was defeated. Cav running over the mountains gives first fire to the defender and is at -1. So this guy actually had no chance of hitting because he was just light cav. Oops. We'll try not to remember that. And I think these are my... What the hell are these? I was going to say these are my Pauls over here. Whatever the hell they are. So, yeah, that was a mistake. I'll say instead that I ran into Little Poland into here, although I don't know I'm allowed to do that. But at least it creates the destruction. I have no real idea what that light cav is useful for, except maybe raiding into Poland. And I'm allied with Poland, so I can't.